Welcome into the video, welcome into the channel. Hope everybody's doing well out there. And in today's video, I'm gonna be showing you some settings to try out for your LG OLED display. And I'm gonna be doing this on my 42-inch LG C3. And the reason why I'm gonna use this display to do this for you today is because I feel like the majority of the people that are gonna be watching this video probably have a C-series display. However, if you have a B series, or if you're fortunate enough to have a gallery series, the G series, these same sort of settings and principles will apply to you as well. So what we're doing is we're gonna pretend like I just unboxed this, I just connected my console, and for the purposes of this video, is a PlayStation 5 Pro. However, these same settings and principles will also apply to you if you have a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. Of course, on the Series X, the settings menus will look a little bit different, but the same sort of general principles here should apply as well. But I just unboxed and set up my 42-inch C3 here. I've just connected my PlayStation 5 Pro. What's the first thing I'm gonna do? The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go into the menus and I'm gonna make sure that if there's anything to do with dimming, I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. So I'm gonna go into the settings and we're gonna go to General. And we're gonna look for OLED Care, which is right here. And then we're gonna go to OLED Panel Care. And this Adjust Logo Brightness, out of the box, this might be set to low or high. Make sure it's turned off. And the reason why you wanna do that is if you're new to OLED displays, they basically have built-in protections for the panel for something called temporary image retention, or in the worst case, permanent image retention. And what this logo brightness does is it basically just looks for things that are static on the screen, like these game tiles right here, or like maybe the logo up here or the time. And after a prolonged period of time of just sitting on a screen like this with these on here, the panel will start to dim itself down over time to protect itself. And while that may be a good thing for panel longevity, if you're gaming, you probably don't want your panel dimming throughout your gameplay, right? So my first recommendation is to go in here and turn this completely off. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna get the best overall picture clarity out of this, which is gonna require 4K to be turned on essentially. So let's go back into settings, and then we're gonna go over to General, and we're gonna go down here to External Devices, next HDMI settings, and then HDMI Deep Color. And I'm gonna let this sit on the screen so you can read that real quick, but what you wanna make sure is make sure that 4K is checked, because out of the box, very likely this is gonna be turned off. And when you connect your console or your device that's gonna be utilizing 4K, it may or may not automatically turn this on. So just make sure that this is the next setting that you do. Next, I'm gonna talk about audio real quick. If you are utilizing just the display speakers, you need to go in here and make a change to the audio. And let me show you where that is. So let's press and hold that settings. We're gonna go to sound, and on the mode, you're gonna wanna select Game Optimizer. And myself personally, who I utilize just the display speakers on this 42C3, I don't really like the way Game Optimizer sounds, but the reason why I'm essentially forced to use this is because of this right here. It's the game dashboard. And essentially, if you're unaware, if you're utilizing the display speakers and you choose any other sound mode other than Game Optimizer, this will be locked out. The only way you'll have access to these quick modes right here, like FPS, RPG, RTS, sports, user, etc. The only way you have access to do what I just did is to make sure that your sound mode is on Game Optimizer. Now, if you're utilizing a third-party device such as an AV receiver or a soundbar, this doesn't necessarily apply to you. Now that we have everything set, we have the audio set, we made sure that logo dimming was off so that we didn't get dimming during gameplay. We made sure that 4K is ready to go. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna wanna make a decision on what form of tone mapping we're gonna use. And that's gonna be very important, because based on what form of tone mapping you wanna use is gonna have an impact on how we set up the console itself to match up with that. But let me go into the menus real quick. And I'm gonna go into, make sure this says HDR, by the way, for Game Optimizer. Otherwise, these settings aren't gonna apply. But we're gonna go into advanced settings, and we're gonna start out here at brightness. And the tone mapping, you notice how it says off? Out of the box, this is gonna be checked on. The reason why I turned it off for the purposes of this video is I don't want you to see the difference in the image quality with it on. In other words, we're gonna pretend like we're basically neutral parties here, and we're gonna decide between HDIG and dynamic tone mapping on. For the purposes of this video, I'm gonna select HDIG. And the reason why is if you are somebody who values overall image accuracy, you want your image, color, clarity, picture quality to match up the best it can to the game developer's intent, the game creator's intent, you're gonna wanna go with HDIG. Now, it's not perfect and it has its own disadvantages compared to dynamic tone mapping on. More on that later. I'm gonna do a separate video for your LG OLED and do settings based on that. But for this video, I'm gonna choose HDIG. And when I click it, ironically, I don't see much of a change here. However, if I had checked on dynamic tone mapping on, you'd see a big difference in the image. Now that we've selected what form of tone mapping we're gonna use, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is to now match up the tone mapping on the console to align with your LG OLED display. So I'm gonna back out of this, and now it's time to go into the actual console settings and make some changes there. So let's head on up to settings. We're gonna go down to screen and video output. We're gonna bypass all this stuff because what we're looking for is adjust HDR right here. So I'm gonna click that. You're gonna be met with a few screens here. This first screen, the objective here is to essentially click the brighter button, which is the up button on the D-pad. You're gonna click this until the very first click after the sun completely disappears, which happens to be that click there. So I'm gonna back it up on camera. I think you could still see it barely right there. Click it one more, now it's completely disappeared. That's where you're gonna set it. On adjust HDR screen number 2, we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna click brighter up on the D-pad, and when we get to that very first click afterwards, which is right here, you're done. On adjust HDR screen 3, you're actually going to make sure that it goes as dark as possible, which by default is already there. Just click OK. And now we're done matching up the tone mapping for the console and the display. All right, next let's make some changes back in the display. So let's go ahead and tap the settings button. We'll just go ahead and do it through the dashboard this time. Let's click all settings. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna head back into advanced settings, and we're gonna go through brightness here and just kind of take a look and see what's going on here. So out of the box, HDIG, you're gonna have OLED pixel brightness 100. Anytime you're dealing with an HDR image, highly recommended to keep your pixel brightness all the way up at 100. So we're gonna do that. For whatever reason, LG, at least on the C3, has locked down a lot of the settings in HDR, which is super annoying to me, but that means we just don't have anything to do here. We've already made a change to the tone mapping. The next one we're gonna take a look at is the expression enhancer, and you're gonna have 3 options: off, detail, and brightness. Now I'm gonna click detail, and I'll explain to you what I'm seeing in person in case the camera's not picking it up. When I click detail, all it really did was it just kind of darkened this up and just created a little more contrast. So when I click this back off, you know, a lot of this mid-range right here, brighten back up, click detail, kind of like what the description says. It's really kind of more focusing on the details. And then there's brightness. When I click brightness, it has the opposite effect. It just wants to brighten up everything. So we'll go from off to brightness. Now, having shown you all 3 of these, if accuracy is the most important option to you, you're gonna wanna select off. This is just gonna keep things clean and accurate. However, just know that you're sacrificing overall image brightness, which when utilizing off or HDIG tone mapping, you're already losing a lot of overall brightness on your LG OLED. Or detail, if you wanna really have more specifics on the finer details in your games, and that's more important than overall brightness, go with that. Myself personally, for this video, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this off. And as you can see, LG has locked down peak brightness, gamma, and these you're not gonna mess with. So next we're gonna go to color. And as you can see, color depth, once again, LG has locked it down. Now, having said that, if I did have the option to manipulate this data, I probably would put it at 55 anyway. Tint, I'm not gonna do anything with. Color gamut, you have some options here. You have auto detect, native, dynamic, and Adobe RGB. We're gonna take a look at how each one of these manipulates this image. So I'm gonna click native, and it really kind of made the colors pop a lot more. The blues especially, let's click dynamic. The blues started to fill in even more. Let's go to Adobe RGB. And for this particular PS5 background here, for me, all it did was desaturate over the overall image. However, if you are an image purist and you don't like super poppy colors and you want maybe even less than a natural looking image, this might be the answer for you, because watch, when I go from Adobe RGB back to native, huge difference here in the greens and the blues. I mean, it's dramatic. If it were me and I was setting up this display for HDIG, I'm actually going to leave it as auto detect. Next, white balance, and this one's going to have arguably the most dramatic effect on this overall image when you make changes here. Now out of the box, you see it came at 0. Let me click the back button. You see it comes at 0. And you'll notice here, this is LG's idea of having a balance between a warm image and a cold image. Me personally, I don't like the way this looks. You know, the whites look too blue. The further you go up towards the top of the cold, it's going to be more blue. The further you go down towards the bottom, it's going to introduce more of a reddish, yellowish sort of hue. So let me go ahead and show you. When I go all the way up to the top, this is super blue. Now the benefit here is the higher you go up with this and that more of that blue that's introduced, your whites and the overall image brightness might pick up a little bit. When you go the other way, you get more of that reddish, yellowish, and for me, more of natural colors in here. And if I were setting this up, this is exactly where I would put it. And again, if image accuracy is important to you and color accuracy, warm 50 is where you're going to want to be. All right, and Finetune, for whatever reason, is locked out. This should not be the case. So unfortunately, I can't show that to you on my C3. However, if you have a C4 or a C5, you may have access to this. Leave me a comment below if you have access to this on a C4 or a C5. And next we're going to look at clarity, and as you could see on my 42-inch LG C3, every single option in this menu is locked out. All right, now let's take a step back real quick and see what kind of image we're working with here. So if you're going to be gaming primarily in a dark room, you have blackout curtains and all that, and you want the best overall experience, you want to experience that OLED because of that infinite contrast and all that, this is not a bad way to go. This overall image is not super bright in this dark room. It's not going to be hard on my eyes. You know, let's take a look around here a little bit. We'll load into a game real quick and see how things look. All right, so we're in Call of Duty here. Let's take a look at the dashboard to see how things are looking. 4K, HDR is on, VRR is on, and there's my frames per second counter. While I'm here, I'll mention if you're new to LG OLEDs, you can actually change the data that's in here. So if I click this little pencil button, you can see here it gives me an X button. I can actually take that out. So if I didn't want a frames per second counter for some reason, I could substitute black stabilizer to let me know whether low latency is on or off, AI game sound, Dolby Atmos, whether that's on or not, and then of course input lag. And that's pretty cool, LG, to have some customization like that. So I'll hop in here into a multiplayer match real quick. We'll go to firing range. That should be kind of a brighter map. We'll kind of see how our overall image is looking based on the settings we did. All right, it finally loaded me into a match that looks like it's already in progress. But the point here is not the gameplay. The point here is to see how the map looks. Let's see, we'll put on, we'll try that. We'll just see how things are looking here. So, walk outside, a lot of flame, whoa. We'll see how things are looking. All right. So, peek around here. Oh, you're upstairs. Oh, there you are. All right. So this overall image looks nice. The colors look pretty saturated. Yeah, this is hard to, so that green looked pretty good, right? I think this image looks good. You know, just kind of a live opinion here, as I'm just getting wrecked out here, is, for me, this image is not quite bright enough. You know, I need overall brightness. Am I gonna, nope, still not gonna get one. Okay. You guys take it easy on me in the comment section with the gameplay here. Jumping into a match that's already in progress. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go about 0 and 10 in here. Well, that reload was super slow. Hey, I got one. Got two. Man, this gold and the diamond and stuff is looking pretty good. I'm liking the way the image does have a nice quality to it. It really does. I'd like a little more brightness in here. That's what's missing to me. You know, we'll just kind of look at the sky real quick. The trees. Yeah, that looks good. This is like a nice looking image. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap the video there because, you know, I'm about to die again, I'm sure. That sky slid, did a 360. Boy, SBMM is just the worst thing ever created. For sure. Okay. Oh, shit. Look how slow this reload is. Man. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here now. This is what your image is going to look like in Call of Duty on a multiplayer map. Based on the settings you did, I think it looks pretty good. Again, I'll say I'd really like to see, it's just missing a little brightness for me. So, but if you did enjoy the video, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps my channel out, gets this video circulated out to more people that may want some help with some settings to try out for their new LG OLED TV. And if you're not subscribed and you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell. With all that being said, until the next one.